and Jubilee following that statement by Raila Odinga for the formation of a 6-month interim government. Odinga says this is the best remedy for the current political standoff. Jubilee MPs have, however, been quick to dismiss the call, saying it is not provided for in the constitution. With NASA having all along insisted that it is not interested in a Nusum Kate government, the question begs, what exactly is an interim government and what form would such a unit adopt? Meanwhile, Siaya has become the first county to pass a bill to legalize formation of the People's Assemblies in Kenya. Formation of the People's Assemblies across the country is part of National Super Alliance NASA's attack on Jubilee as they seek to stop President Uhuru Kenyatta from ruling the country after he was declared winner of October 26 fresh presidential election. Is this move by the county assemblies legitimate? Will we also be getting updates we will be getting updates from Nyeri County, which is still in mourning following the death of its governor, the late Dr. Wahome Gakuru, in a road accident early this week. Good morning. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Welcome to Citizen Extra. Let's start off with an update from Nyeri. Martin Monene is our reporter there. Very good morning to you, Martin. What is happening in Nyeri in as far as burial preparations for the late governor, Dr. Wahome Gakuru? Martin, if you can hear me, we're looking for an update from your end with regard to burial preparations for the late governor, Dr. Wahome Gakuru.
A very good morning to you, Fred, from Nyeri County, 2 days after the death of Nyeri Governor Dr. Wahome. And I am in Nyeri town, and as you can see, life is slowly returning to normal in this particular county, with residents slowly having come to terms with the loss of their third governor, Dr. Wahome Gakuru. And I must say from this county that preparations are still ongoing to ensure that the late doctor or the late governor gets the proper send-off. The official date for the burial is set for the 18th of this month, with the deputy governor Kahiga Mutahi having said that they were looking at a date that is convenient for one of Dr. Gakuru's son, who is sitting for his Form 4 paper, and they settled on the 18th for he will have done most of his papers, and it's going to be on a Saturday, and therefore he will be able to attend his dad's burial without necessarily having to stop his examination papers. Also, I must say that we were able to visit the home of his parents in Kanuna area, where we did see a lot of neighbors and friends coming in to really assist in the preparations and getting the home ready to receive guests who've been streaming into the home, and also who are expected to continue coming into that home up to that particular day when the funeral will be held. And also on the same, there has been talk of what happens now that the governor is no more in terms of succession in this county. And yesterday we were able to speak with the deputy governor and also the county spokesperson, who actually said that it was scheduled to be taking place today. The deputy governor was expected to be sworn in later today, but later they said that they have changed and postponed that particular happening or swearing in until further notice, and they said that they had been advised to do so by the Council of Governors. And of course, Nyeri residents are still eager to see what happens, especially now that the governor is no more. It's important to note once again that Dr. Wahome Gakuru was a man who had campaigned on a development program, and so the Nyeri residents really having a lot of hope in his leadership. And also an important thing to note is that Deputy Governor Mutahi Kahiga said, actually he's on record saying that all the decisions that the governor made, he was part and parcel of them, obviously expressing confidence that he would be able to carry out the mandate that the people of Nyeri had given the Nyeri governor. And basically, Fred, that is how things are in this county, preparations ongoing as we wait to see when the new governor of Nyeri will be sworn in. Back to you in studio, Fred.
Martin, as far as burial preparations are going on at the family home in Nyeri, what can you tell us with regard to that? Martin, if you're still with us, we'd like to know, as far as burial preparations are concerned at the family home, what can you tell us about that?
in terms of preparations for the burial, one thing I can say is that we have had 3 levels of arrangements. First, we have the national level that is being headed by the ICTC's Jomo Shero, and they were able to communicate yesterday the official date that the burial will be taking place. But we also have another level of meetings that is taking place, that is at the county level, that the deputy governor of this county is actually leading. And I can say, as it is right now, they have actually agreed on the date and on the venue of the funeral, which is going to be in Kanuna village, where the parents of the late governor are. And at the home, which is at the family level, preparations are still ongoing. Yesterday we visited the home and we were actually able to witness people, friends and family and neighbors come together to ensure that the home is actually ready to receive even high-profile guests who are expected to grace the occasion when the send-off of the Nyeri governor. So as it is right now, Fred, I can confidently say that most of the things are on track. Preparations going on here in Nyeri, and of course Nyeri residents are getting themselves ready to be able to attend the funeral of the late governor, which has been set to take place on the 18th of this month.
Thank you, Martin. Martin Monene there with an update from Nyeri County. Remember, Nyeri County is in mourning following the death 2 days ago of the governor for that county, Dr. Wahome Gakuru, and burial preparations are still going on. Of course, there's also talk of the transition at the helm of that county. The swearing-in ceremony was scheduled to take place today for the deputy governor to take over as governor, but that has since been postponed indefinitely. Let's now cross over to Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County, for an update there. Bishop Cornelius Korir is set to be buried later this week. Bishop Korir is a Catholic bishop for Eldoret Diocese. Let's now join John Wanyama. John, good morning. How are the preparations going on in as far as the burial for Bishop Cornelius Korir?
Very good morning back there, studio in Dimuli, and here in Uasin Gishu also the county and the entire nation is still mourning the death of Bishop Korir. And Bishop died last week on Monday, and he will be laid to rest this week on Saturday. And something of interest in Dimuli is that a bishop will be laid to rest inside this church behind me, where all believers will be. Maybe as we were talking to leaders of this church yesterday, they were saying that it is an opportunity that believers, faithful believers, will be going there after the burial just to be praying together there to see where the bishop will be laid to rest. All preparations have been almost clear. There are just final touches here, as you can see. The roads here being made, the tents here, seats, and everything is actually almost complete, just for the preparation of this bishop that most people have nicknamed as the Prince of Peace. In Nimuli, let me talk to Vicar General, the father here, who can talk to us just to give us a sneak peek of what is really going to happen during the burial of this bishop. If you can just briefly tell us, is it true that you are really going to bury the bishop inside the church?
Yeah, it is true. It is now official that the bishop will be laid to rest inside the church at a particular place which is already chosen.
Yeah. And maybe what are programs, preparation, how far have you gone, how many people we are expecting?
The program is now finally out. We're expecting to remove the body of the late bishop from Moi Teaching and Referral Mortuary on Friday from exactly around 9 a.m. And then the body will be brought to the Sacred Heart Cathedral, and from 10 a.m. to around 3 a.m. people will be given an opportunity basically to view the body and to express their last respects to the bishop. And we have accommodated this because it was a request of so many people that they really wanted to be given an opportunity to view the body. After that, we are going to have a Requiem Mass celebrated in honor of the soul of Bishop Korir at around 3 p.m. And after 3 p.m., we are going to have some subsequent masses and vigil prayers the whole night of Friday until Saturday morning. On Saturday morning at around 8 a.m., the body, the cortege will leave Sacred Heart Cathedral to Eldoret Sports Club, where the funeral mass will be celebrated. The mass will begin at exactly 10 in the morning, and we want to ask all mourners who would really wish to come to join us to celebrate the bishop to start really streaming to the sports club ground as early as 6 in the morning. We expect the mass to take around 2.5 hours, and we are going to have some short speeches. And it is our expectation that after the speeches and after the celebration of the Holy Mass, the body will be brought back here to the Sacred Heart Cathedral, Eldoret, where the final rites, funeral rites, will be conducted. And after that, then people will be free to live at their own pleasure. We are expecting really a crowd, a very huge crowd of people, and we would really wish to estimate around 50,000 and above. And we are ready really to receive such a number of people.
Thank you very much, Ndimuli. Just in a nutshell, that is what really is happening here, and most people are really planning to come for this funeral, as you have the father say. And something that will be remembered most about this bishop is that the bishop, he built what we call small homes. These small homes in Ndimuli are specifically for those children who needy children, and he built these homes in Elgeyo Marakwet, Nandi, Uasin Gishu, just to ensure the needy children are taken care of and have education that they really require. So in Ndimuli, from this side, we are still following up on these stories, and how everything will be unfolding. Will be coming to you anytime to inform you and our viewers wherever you are. Back to you in studio in Ndimuli.
Thank you, John. John Wanyama there, live from Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County, with an update with regard to Bishop Cornelius Korir's burial set for this Saturday. The late Bishop Cornelius Korir, the Catholic bishop for the Diocese of Eldoret, died last week. Now, main discussion this morning is to do with the fresh row that has emerged between NASA and Jubilee following a call by NASA leader Raila Odinga for the formation of a 6-month interim government. Let's get an update and a feel of what people are, or how people are reacting to this particular question. Let's head to Mombasa. Asha Bikidusa is on standby. A very good morning to you, Asha. What are people saying about this call by Raila Odinga for an interim government?
Very good morning to you, Fred. I'm coming to you live from Mombasa here in Majengo. And I'll be speaking to some residents of Mombasa who will be giving us their views concerning yesterday's terms where the NASA leader Raila Odinga said that there should be an interim government formed and that the President Uhuru Kenyatta should step aside. I'll be now joined by some residents who will be giving me their views. Naam, tuambie majina yako na hisia zako kuhusiana na matamshi ya kiongozi wa NASA Raila Odinga kuwa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta anafaa jiuzulu ili kuweze kuwa na serikali ya mpito.
Majina kamili ni Geoffrey Ainea Okomi. Sasa kulingana na vile baba wa taifa alisema Raila Amolo Odinga ya kwamba lazima rais ambaye alichaguliwa kupitia kura hii ya kwamba lazima step down, mimi namuunga mkono kabisa, na hao wenzangu sisi tunaunga baba mkono kabisa, kwa sababu kitu muhimu ni kwamba lazima kuwe na usafi ndani ya hiyo serikali. Ikiwa Raila atakubali Uhuru aendelee kuwa rais ndio afanye majadiliano, itakuwa vigumu sana. Kuna pressure za kutoka kando na kando. Ni nchi ikae ndani ya miezi 6 bila rais. Hao wakikutana wanakutana kama raia. Kusudi uamuzi wowote atakaofanya utakuwa kwamba haumuumizi yeyote kati ya Uhuru wala Raila.
Naam, asante sana. Itakuwa tunaweza kujiunga na mkazi mwingine. Na mtuambie majina yako na hisia zako kuhusiana na matamshi ya Raila Odinga.
My name is Abdul Maingi Esaki. Bila ambaye tunaona kupitia Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ameregesha Kenya na nyuma sana, kwa sababu wengi wetu hawapati kazi, vitu vingi kutoka nje za nje, kwa sababu kila mmoja anaokopa kwa ajili ya siasa. Kama ni kujiondoa kwenye siasa, kwenye rais ajiondoe, amwasie Raila Amolo Odinga, kwa sababu pengine akiingia Kenya itabadilika na tutapata kila mtu sira yake, kwa sababu Uhuru Kenyatta ameangamisha Kenya sana, kwa sababu kama mimi pia.
Thank you very much. As you've heard there, Fred, a couple of views there from some residents of Mombasa, and now back to you, Fred, in Nairobi.
Well, some very interesting comments there by some of the residents of Mombasa, but I must mention those are personal opinions of those residents of Mombasa, and they do not represent the views of Royal Media or Citizen TV. In studio for this discussion this morning, we do have Michael Agwanda, an analyst, Senator Samson Cherargei from Nandi County, and David Osiani, also an analyst. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, before we even get to this discussion, of course, let's listen to what Raila Odinga had to say on his interview with Reuters early this week, as reported by Samogina.
From both sides of the political divide, the opposition chief claiming the acrimonious presidential rerun had balkanized the country.
We need to have an interim arrangement of governance which will involve representatives from both parties. We think that maybe 6 months would be required to carry out all these changes that we need in this country in order to have a proper, free and fair election.
Odinga, who was on several occasions dismissed, claims that he was after a coalition government, now says he is ready to dialogue with President Uhuru Kenyatta on constitutional review to effect credible changes for proper elections.
If they are ready for serious discussions, we will be ready. If they want to protract it, it will be very protracted. What I want to assure them is that we will not surrender.
But a section of Jubilee leaders have scoffed at Odinga, claiming he has come out of the closet to demand what he has been wanting all along.
We have said that Raila is out there to look for a nusumkate, nusumkeka kind of arrangement.
We are not ready for any negotiation with the opposition. And for any legitimate negotiation that could be done, it was already done on 26th.
Odinga has fashioned his resistance movement as a struggle towards achieving electoral reforms and a fight against vote rigging. Already, Siaya County Assembly becomes the first NASA-leaning county assembly to approve a motion denouncing Kenyatta's presidency. Odinga has also ordered NASA MPs to attend county assembly sittings from tomorrow and offer guidance on the motions.
If they try to swear Uhuru Kenyatta, even if the Supreme Court now clears him, it will just be the beginning of another struggle. I think he knows that he does not have the confidence in the people. In this repeat poll, he got less than 30% of the electorate voted for him. That is a vote of no confidence.
NASA leaders from Nyanza region now joining their coastal counterparts in pushing for secession, claiming the election was not representative of the nation.
People can be governed either directly or through elected representatives. We did not elect Uhuru, so we are on a direct mode.
When you have a system, a government that does not regard you, that does not treat you as if you belong to this country, then the next question you ask, then why do I continue to pay taxes in this country?
The opposition leader is in the US to meet the leadership of the Congress and is expected to give a public address on Thursday on overcoming political crisis and advancing democracy. He is expected back in the country over the weekend.
Yes, a 6-month interim government. That's what we want to talk about here with my guests, David Osiani, Samson Cherargei, Senator, and Michael Agwanda. Gentlemen, this talk about an interim government, caretaker government, was there initially, immediately after the Supreme Court gave a ruling with regard to the August 8th election on September 1st. After that, there was a lot of talk of caretaker government, who should take charge, or in temporary incumbency and all this. Then it quietened down towards October 26th. We knew now things are different. NASA decided to go for to pursue other channels. The resistance movement, People's Assembly, which we'll be talking about. Now, this week again, we're talking about 6-month interim government. Of course, Jubilee already saying that is what they've always wanted. This is a path towards a Nusumkate government. Michael, where are we?
Fred, good morning.
We are in a crossroad as a nation. And the reason why I say we are at a crossroad is simply because of the state where we are today. We've had 2 elections that we've not finally pinned down. We are having the petition against the presidential election in court now, and perhaps in the next, maybe in the next 15 or so days, we should be able to hear the verdict, whether it will be validated or invalidated. And for that, you're faced with a monumental task of figuring out what if it is invalidated, because there's a possibility it could be invalidated. I mean, it was invalidated, and it can also be invalidated because the same reasons that that made the invalidation of the August 8th are some of the same reasons the petitioners are facing. And we also have a situation basically where you have a parliament that is not fully constituted as per the standing orders. The oppositions have not submitted the leadership names to the House. In fact, they requested that they should be given until the 28th of this month. And so the Parliament did not have any option because they can't run the business of the House until this House is properly constituted. And so they went for a recess for that reason. And you can see that nothing seemed to be going on. We are in a crossroad where members of Parliament that hugely depend on CDF to spread the influence in the communities, and also perhaps just to give back to what they think is a big fight they had on CDF. And it's not there. The governors and the counties are not receiving money from the from the central government, and so everything seems to be at a standstill. We're in a situation where even the investors, I mean, we know that even just from nullification of the presidential election on the 8th of August, about 1.5 billion was lost on the economy because the investors kept off and they said, let's wait and see. And that wait and see attitude is hoarding resources that otherwise will be spreading all over the country. And so business are crying. People are not doing business. In fact, when you look at even the issue of the boycott that perhaps we'll look at later on, you find the stores and the specific products that are in the stores are not selling. In fact, they are perishable goods. They're the goods that will not be there for long, but you can see the offers being made, buy one, get two, and something must be done. When Honorable Raila talks about, perhaps an interim government, as you alluded to, or you had asked about, he's talking about a situation that perhaps needs a serious discussion. When the presidential election was nullified, even before that, the term of any elected leaders ceases the day people go to cast a first ballot paper. And that was 8th of August.
Yet the Constitution does not provide for a vacuum for that particular position. It's until a new leader is sworn in, then the leader who's there, that's when he takes his leave.
Correct. I agree with that. And I was just following to that.
Yes.
Any elected leader other than the president still sits in the office. But the members of parliament ceases to be members of parliament the day people go to cast their ballot papers. That's the end of their term. The president, in a nutshell, will continue until another president assumes office. However, the circumstances that we were faced with of taking this matter to the Supreme Court, and after the Supreme Court nullification, there was a problem. Well, we went for another election because it looks very clear that the president will still stay in. But remember, when he's staying in an incumbency capacity, not with full authority as if election had not been done.
But now we're in a process where the matter is already before the Supreme Court. As you said, in the next 10, 12 days, the Supreme Court could actually make a ruling on this matter. That gives it legal basis. That gives this election a legal basis. If the Supreme Court declares that that election was valid, what happens to this call by Raila Odinga for an interim government?
I think the call for Raila Odinga for the interim government is where this country has faltered the way the process of engagement needs to be looked into. The reason why I say that is because this country, we've had issues of people calling for the troubles that are bedeviling them, exclusion, people that are talking about tribalism in this country. We've had issues that are very pertinent for discussion. Yes. But what has happened in the past is the government does not engage on issues that emerges for a specific discussion. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. When we are talking about, we've had issues of secession, flying around the corridors and the airwaves. We've had issues of marginalization. We have communities in northern Kenya that sometimes says they wonder whether they're in Kenya. But look at the example of what has just happened at the coastal area, where the envoys decides to go and meet the political leaders in Mombasa. Now, the government that is in place that will ordinarily think this is not even something we could ever talk about, even think about discussing, did not go to Mombasa and say, hey, gentlemen, what are you talking about? What could be your specific needs and how can we meet them? We have a government, basically, that hardly listen to the cry of the people. And other people from outside will see that here there seems to be a problem. Perhaps we need to engage because this is a huge problem. And nobody
the need to engage is appreciated, but the call for an interim government, yes, Jubilee members, you're one of them, Senator, you've already dismissed it as a push towards Nusum Kate, but how do the two relate? An interim government, Nusum Kate, coalition government, they're not the same thing. Why quick to dismiss it as a push for that?
At least Raila finally has admitted he is looking for a Nusum Kate government.
How?
In fact, that is the reason, and we know the reason he decided to speak to international community, because he's looking for partners who will tell Uhuru Kenyatta and the rest of us, can you sit down because we have crisis. All along, we have been saying the reason he is boycotting elections, the reason he has been frustrating IEBC and any constitutionally created institutions is to ensure he wants a Nusum Kate government. And that is why he's even going for economic sabotage to create some form of crisis. And we know Raila Odinga for a fact, he has always thrived when crises are there. Because if you look at the constitution, there is nowhere that provides for caretaker government. And it is historical that Raila Odinga was the one pushing for pure presidential system when some of us were in no, and even the deputy president. We asked the question, how can somebody get 6 million plus votes and yet he cannot be allowed to run for senator or a member of parliament? Now we are seeing the script that NCCK read and the script Raila read are one and the same. And that is why we are saying, as Jubilee, the only conversation we did have, the dialogue that we did have, was on 26th October through the ballot. And it was directed as per Article 140, sub-Article 3, where this presidential election was invalidated on 8 August, and fresh elections was ordered by the Supreme Court. And in that petition that NASA did present, because we no longer know whether it's NASA or National Resistance Movement, they did present, they didn't find that respondent, who is Uhuru Kenyatta and Jubilee, culpable of any electoral malpractice. And therefore, when IEBC did the elections was done, we are aware that they were very calculative in ensuring that violence preceded most of the 4 counties in the Nyanza region, of Pole, and they ensured that the violence did occur. They got what you call scaremongering, so that people did not exercise their rights in accordance with Article 38. And some of these issues are coming, the chicken are finally coming home to roost, because we have always insisted. Raila has realized he doesn't have numbers, he doesn't have strategy, he doesn't have anything that can ensure him win an election in a fair. So the only way he will always, the problem in this country and with the presidential candidate of NASA is that every election is stolen if he's not the winner.
Okay. David, our constitution does not mention anything like a caretaker government and interim government. It appears NASA has decided to go outside what we know as the Constitution of Kenya in its push for all these other things, the People's Assembly, the resistance movement. Why at this time, yet the Constitution provides mechanisms within itself to even review laws, to change the constitution, to have it amended? Why go outside and call for things that do not exist in our laws?
In my estimation, the call by the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga, the extrajudicial call beyond the law for an engagement, a caretaker government and things like that, is an appeal to the conscience of Jubilee. An appeal to their conscience because Raila Odinga probably understands, and we all do, I think Senator does too, that you cannot, the imagination that you would want to lead a country and say, to hell with it, and move on as if the country is good to go, is in itself preposterous. It's absurd. The recklessness with which Jubilee seems to be treating the other half of the country who supports Raila Odinga is only but sorry. And I think therefore Raila Odinga has decided to appeal to the conscience of President Uhuru Kenyatta. But senior, listen to me. You cannot go ahead and pretend, even if the courts were to validate your supposed victory on the 26th, you cannot move on, leaving half of the country behind, weeping and crying and gnashing their teeth and bitter and angry. Because if you do not resolve that, history is a very serious teacher. If you do not resolve this, it gets to bite you in a few days to come. Anger that's welled up in people, as is seen among at least the followership of Raila Odinga, is not something you'd want to wish away. That's not statesmanship. It is about ensuring that whereas you're angry, let's get a fair process of determining who leads the country. And half of this populace, you know, that's led by the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the NASA leader, believe that the election has never been fair. In their estimation, and justifiably so, the Jubilee side of the government was at least proven judicially to have fiddled with the election when the judgment, the ruling was made. To what extent? The ruling may not have indicated, but judicially it was stated that the election was not free and fair.
But it did not expressly blame Jubilee.
Yeah, no, it did not blame Jubilee.
That is inaccurate.
It blamed IEBC.
Yes.
And the call for that IEBC let's take beautiful. For some people,
okay,
broke down into countries, you know, Macedonia, Romania, and name the Montenegro, because of the attitude of the leadership of Yugoslavia at that moment. And economically, people felt they were left out. Now, you are here in Kenya. You have Catalonia in Spain. They've just decided to walk out. The EU may make noise and say that this will not happen. It's not even 2 months since Catalonia, whose headquarters is Barcelona, decided to walk out of Spain. Now, it therefore calls on the Jubilee side to soften their stand and listen to the country. Raila's voice is not his own. I don't think that we would want a situation where we want to believe that Raila merely but speaks for himself and his personal gain. In my estimation, and I think I am very rational and fair at this, he speaks for the other half of the country who feel left out, who feel that the processes of determining who is to be the leader of the country, which is an election, seems to have been bypassed or at least fiddled with. Okay. In which case then, they believe the only way is to pursue the very constitution. You know, leadership, governance directly or through representation are both provisions of the constitution. We just never envisaged that we would get to a point where we have to even think of it. And so this caretaker...
Yet there are ways provided within the Constitution to actually amend it and include anything that you may want to include through a referendum, through a popular initiative, through parliamentary initiative. It is there in this document. How come... because all these things that we're talking about, and cessation, resistance movement, People's Assembly, just before November, Raila Odinga was demanding for an election within the next 90 days. Now he's changed and is talking about a 6-month interim government. It doesn't look like NASA is really clear on the way forward, even within itself. Because what changed between the time Raila Odinga said there needs to be fresh elections within the next 90 days to now that he's asking for an interim government to take over for the next 6 months? What has changed?
Fred, you've asked about a referendum. Okowa Kenya was just here the other day. And who was officiating Okowa Kenya? It was a process done by IBC, and you saw what Isaka San-led team did. They made sure that some files, some signatures, they said that some of the signatures are fake. They had no way to verify whether the fake signatures...
Are you saying the only option right now is to go outside of the Constitution?
Hold on. I'm getting there.
Yes.
You're having an institution that is being blamed for even a process of changing just the will of the people, by seeking for the will of the people. And you have an institution that comes and says, oh, this signature doesn't look right. And they've not even verified They did not even get signature experts to verify those things. It's something they looked at and said, oh, you haven't reached the threshold that we wanted. And so what happens, the process began of hounding out the officials of IBC, which they did, they succeeded with. But Fred, when we are talking about national issues, and then you just belittle it to a half a loaf, it is an insult to the integrity and the intelligence of this country. It is not about half a load that Honorable Murkomen and Duale keeps on talking about, and my younger brother here now is starting to talk about. Who tells these people that Raila is not able to eat a fuller loaf if he wants to eat it for one reason or another? Raila does not have to be in parliament for him to, amass the following that he's having. No, absolutely not. In fact, he's been out there, but you can still see exactly. When my brother here talks about, oh, he doesn't have the numbers, I think he should be worried about that, because Rift Valley has not even given Uhuru the numbers that they needed the other day in the 2026 election.
The big question now is, all these pronouncements by NASA, and I've listed them, calls for cessation, demands for elections in 90 days, calling for a boycott of some products, calling for the establishment of People's Assembly, now demanding for an interim government. Are they really well thought out? Because it looks like knee-jerk reactions. Some reaction, this week you say this, next week you say something different. Because how, for example, the 6-month interim government and the demand for another election in 90 days, how do they go in tandem?
I think what NASA is doing is to put every possible pressure to the government to come to their senses and say, indeed, half of this country perhaps did not vote us, even if we illusionally think they actually voted us. And how do we deal with these people?
So you're saying that the main intention is to force Jubilee to the negotiating table by making these pronouncements, but you do not necessarily mean them. That probably Raila Odinga is not necessarily demanding for an interim government to be formed, but is just trying to push Jubilee to the negotiating table. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is Raila believes, I strongly believe that every statement that Raila makes out there, he believes in it. And he believes that it should be implemented. Remember, Raila is not saying that make an interim government and so let it just go for all the same. He's saying make it just for a short time. And the reason why perhaps Raila wants this interim government more than anything else is he knows that a presidency comes with power. It's an institution that otherwise, if not checked, will still not be able to, you'll not be able to get the changes specifically on our electoral process in this country.
So he believes in all these things.
I strongly believe he believes in this thing.
Do you think NASA believes in all these things? Because sometimes it appears like a bit disjointed, especially on the call for a fresh election after 90 days, which they were very vocal about, just around the presidential rerun of October 26th. And then now an interim government for 6 months. Do you see any connection between the two?
I think NASA in itself does not know what they want, but we know what Raila wants. As we have said earlier, he wants a Nusumkate. These things of People's Assembly, is just sugarcoating the entire process.
So you think it's not genuine even in his demand for an interim government?
It is not genuine. What he is looking for is, there is an hangover of 2007, 2008 of wanting a kind of Nusumkate government they had with the President Mwai Kibaki. And when you hear people like Joho, for example, calling for cessation, these are people who are governors who have been controlling resources. What have they done? If they come out and say cost is excluded, for example, from development, what have they done with the money they were given for the last 5 years? Goodness, they have been the governors for the last 5 years. Their term was just renewed. So when you talk about cessation, and you know the issue, when the elections was not done in the 4 counties, it was for all Kenyans. They saw how the process was being sabotaged by these same people who are being insincere. And I want to say this because it means the elected representatives, as provided by Article 1(2) of the Constitution, have abdicated their responsibility. And it is in contrary with the leadership and integrity part of responsibility. Because if you are saying, as an elected senator or as an elected member of parliament, you want some public or bunge la wananchi to discuss the issues, yet the Constitution has created a platform where you can give out your issues in a more constitutional way, in a more legal way, so that some of these issues can be ironed out. So when you hear people coming up with people's assemblies, coming up with cessations, those are just desperation moves who are trying to create a crisis in this country. And you can see Raila is direct talking to his friends who are international community, create a crisis. The international community calls for Raila and Uhuru to sit down. But the president did say when he received this, when he was being declared presidential-elect in just concluded 26th October elections, he said, let us allow the constitutional and legal process to be concluded. Then if there is any dialogue to be done, let us allow these constitutional mechanisms to be done. Then from there, we can now discuss on the way forward. But the solution is not a caretaker government. You know, we are using a lot of big words of a caretaker government. It is simple as a Nusumkate government. Okay. And this narrative has also been built.
Okay. David, do you see a clear strategy on the part of NASA? Or is it a case of shooting randomly in the air, hoping that one of these pronouncements will hit or could hit the target? Because it looks like the line of clarity in the next course of action for NASA is missing.
Well, as myself a strategist and a policy person, there may be not that very clear path in terms of strategy in what NASA is doing. Yet as a student of politics also, I understand that is exactly Raila Odinga.
So no strategy is a strategy here.
Exactly. You know, that's exactly Raila Odinga for you. He is that you are unable to tell which way. If you go back into the politics of the country and how he does his politics, you know, so that he is pursuing A, B, C, and you wouldn't just know when to catch him. You can pursue him on C and find him on A. That's about it. But I like it when the senator says that, for example, Nyanza not having had the election in the 25 constituencies is not basis enough, so the country can move on. Because then the question for me, as Jubilee has continued harping on this narrative, is what about Kilifi County, for example, that has about 508,000 voters, but in which less than 15,000 turned out to vote? Do you think it is morally right for Kilifi County, let alone Nyanza, because they seem to be harping on this narrative that they were violently stopped from voting? Correct. What about Mombasa County, that has more than 500,000 voters, but in which less than 50,000 people went to vote on 26th? Is it okay for the other 450,000? Do you want to tell them, take a walk? What about Kakamega, that has well about 700,000, if I'm not wrong, voters, and less than 100,000 people turned up to vote? What do you tell the 600,000? That it's okay, we are going to move on with the country? Is that the way we want to build a nation? Do we want to straddle on the face of the earth like Colossus and say, you know what we did? If you feel aggrieved, go to hell? That's not leadership.
Just before you go on a break, let me ask you a question. Do you think this lack of strategy as a strategy for NASA is working so far? Because it appears Jubilee is simply ignoring them and moving on.
You know, when the South African government was fighting the apartheid system, people probably haven't read about it. They created something called the disinvestment movement. The disinvestment movement, created in the 80s, was to stop business, was for the South Africans themselves to stop business with any American company or European company that was supporting the apartheid system. The disinvestment movement was started as a joke, but the disinvestment movement worked so well that it eventually got people to sit down and say, hey guys, the black man needs his fair share. That's what Raila Odinga, for example, look at the boycotts. I was in Ridgeways on Sunday in one of the supermarkets, and I went to the current provisional store. Those are elitist, populations and demographics of this country. And literally, Brookside was heaped up there. Who makes the laws? And when that company makes the laws, the truth is, of course, that there are people who work in them. The laws, cascades downwards to everyone. Now, probably some of these actions will force people to come to the table. The greatest investment for the UK in this country, United Kingdom, is Vodacom. It is Safaricom. The
strategy is force dialogue at whatever cost.
I think so. And we must not even force it. I think we need to get to the point. Let's take a break. It's time to have a dialogue.
Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll be getting Michael Agwanda and the Senator for Nandi to comment on that the strategy here is to force dialogue at whatever cost.